Why are you and your relatives crashing at my house for Christmas without even giving me a heads up? Don't you people have your own homes? Those words left my mouth with a force I didn't even recognize. I had exploded. After months of silence, after months of swallowing every humiliation, every snub, every order barked at me in my own home, I finally exploded at the audacity of my son-in-law, Ryan. He had just informed me, not asked me, that 30 people were going to spend Christmas here, in my house. The house I built with my husband over 40 years of marriage. The house where I raised my daughter, Jennifer. The house that now seemed to belong to everyone but me. Ryan stood in front of me with that arrogant posture he had perfected in the 2 years he had been living under my roof. Arms crossed, chin up, that mocking smirk that made me feel small, insignificant, invisible in my own living room. 30 people, he had said 30. As if he were talking about inviting 3 or 4 buddies over for a beer. As if my opinion didn't matter. As if this house didn't have an owner. My daughter Jennifer was sitting on the sofa, the same sofa I had bought with my first paycheck as a nurse more than 40 years ago. She was staring at her cell phone, swiping her finger across the screen with total indifference, as if this conversation had nothing to do with her. As if the fate of my house didn't matter. As if her mother didn't exist. But when she heard my outburst, when she heard the tone of my voice rise for the first time in months, something changed in her face. She looked up from the phone, her eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I saw something I had never seen before in my own daughter's gaze. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't shame for what her husband had done. It was pure fury. Fury directed at me, toward her mother, the woman who had brought her into the world, the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. She immediately jumped off the sofa. Her entire body was trembling with rage. The phone fell onto the cushions, forgotten. She raised her hand toward me, pointing her index finger as if I were a disobedient child who needed a timeout. Her cheeks were flushed red, her lips were quivering, and then she screamed. She screamed with a voice that echoed through the entire house, a voice that pierced the walls and probably reached all the way to the street. If you don't let my husband and his relatives in, we are leaving for good. For good. Those 2 words hung in the air between us, heavy as stones. For good. The ultimate threat. The final ultimatum. Jennifer looked at me with wide eyes, waiting for my reaction. Ryan had taken a step forward, standing beside his wife in a gesture of solidarity. Both of them were looking at me now. Both of them expected to see me crumble. They expected tears. They expected desperate pleas. They expected me to break down at the threat of losing my only daughter, my only reason for living after my husband died 5 years ago. They knew my weak point. They knew I would do anything not to lose her. They knew that the fear of loneliness had kept me quiet for 2 full years of abuse. But what Jennifer and Ryan didn't know was that I was no longer the same woman I was 3 months ago. I was no longer the submissive mother who accepted anything just to keep the peace. I was no longer the lonely widow who feared staying alone in this big, empty house. Something had died in me the day I found those documents hidden in the drawer in their bedroom. The day I discovered what they really thought of me. The day I understood that to them, I wasn't a mother or a mother-in-law. I was an obstacle, a problem that needed to be eliminated. So when Jennifer finished screaming her threat, when Ryan smiled, thinking they had won this battle just like they had won all the previous ones, I did something they didn't expect, something even I didn't know I was capable of doing. I smiled. It was a small, calm smile, almost imperceptible to anyone who didn't know me well. But it was there, in the corners of my lips, in my eyes. A smile that didn't show joy, but something much deeper, something much more dangerous. And then, with a calm I didn't even know I possessed, with a voice so serene it seemed to belong to another person, I said a single phrase, a phrase of only 2 words, a phrase I had mentally rehearsed for weeks while they slept, a phrase I had waited for the perfect moment to pronounce. Then leave. 2 simple words, 2 words that weighed like mountains. Then leave. Nothing more. Nothing less. No screaming, no tears, no drama. Just 2 words spoken with absolute calm that made the silence that followed deafening. The change in Jennifer's face was instantaneous. The fury turned into pure shock. Her eyes opened so wide it looked like they were going to pop out of their sockets. Her mouth opened, forming a perfect circle, but no sound came out. The hand she had raised to point at me fell slowly to her side, as if she had lost all strength. Her legs began to tremble visibly. She took a step back, staggering slightly, as if my 2 words had physically hit her in the chest. Ryan had also lost his composure. The arms he had crossed fell to his sides. His arrogant smile was completely wiped from his face. He looked at me with narrowed eyes, as if he were trying to solve an impossible riddle. As if the words I had just spoken were in a foreign language. As if his mother-in-law, the quiet little old lady who always said yes to everything, who never caused trouble, who accepted every humiliation with a sad smile, couldn't possibly have said something like that. What did you say? Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper now, a thin, brittle thread that could barely be heard in the heavy silence of the living room. All her rage had evaporated like water under the sun. Now only confusion remained, and something else. Something I saw shine in her eyes for the first time in years. Fear. My daughter was afraid of me, of her own mother, because Jennifer knew me better than anyone in this world. She had grown up by my side. She had seen every one of my expressions thousands of times. She knew every tone of my voice. She knew when I was sad, when I was tired, when I was pretending to be okay. And that voice she had just heard, that calm and cold voice, was not the voice of the desperate mother she hoped to manipulate one more time. It was the voice of a woman who had made a definitive decision, a decision from which there would be no turning back. I stood up from the armchair where I had been sitting, the same armchair where my husband used to sit and read the newspaper every Sunday morning. The same armchair where I had sat to cry in silence so many nights after he died. My knees creaked a little as I got up. At 72 years old, getting up isn't as easy as it used to be. The body doesn't respond with the same agility, but I did it with dignity, with calm, without rushing, as if I had all the time in the world. I walked toward the living room window. My footsteps resonated in the silence. I could feel their gazes stuck to my back. I looked out at the street through the glass. The neighbors' Christmas lights were already on, little colored lights blinking in the trees. There was a big decorated tree in the house across the street, full of gold and red ornaments. Everything looked festive and cheerful outside. The world was continuing its normal course. Families were preparing to celebrate, but inside my house, the atmosphere was completely different. Inside my house, there was a silence that cut like a sharp knife. I said, "Leave," I repeated, without turning to look at them. My voice remained calm, serene, as if I were commenting on the weather or a cake recipe. If you think threatening me with leaving forever is going to make me change my mind, you are wrong, Jennifer. If you think I am going to allow 30 strangers to invade my house without my consent just because you order it, you are very wrong. So, if you want to leave for good, go ahead. The door is right there. Nobody is stopping you. You can pack your things right now if you want. I heard a choked sob behind me. It was Jennifer. But I didn't turn around. Not yet. I kept looking out the window, watching a small child run along the sidewalk chasing a dog. Normal life. Happy life. Life that continued regardless of the drama unfolding within these 4 walls. Mom, Jennifer's voice sounded broken now, almost like a little girl who has just been scolded. Mom, you can't be serious. Please. It's just Christmas. We just want to spend the holidays as a family. It's important to Ryan that his relatives get to know our house. Why are you being so difficult? Why can't you be generous for once in your life? We are just asking you for a favor. A simple favor. There it was. The accusation I had been waiting to hear. I was the difficult one. I was the one who lacked generosity. I was the selfish one, refusing to do a simple favor. Not them, who had been living in my house without paying a single dollar in rent for 2 years. Not them, who used my electricity without limit, leaving the lights on all night. Not them, who wasted my water in 30-minute showers. Not them, who ate my food without even saying thank you. Not them, who ordered me to cook, clean, wash their clothes as if I were their personal maid. No, I was the selfish one because I didn't want 30 strangers taking total control of my home during the most important holidays of the year. Finally, I turned to look at them. I spun slowly on my heels. Jennifer's eyes were full of tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of frustration. Because for the first time in 2 years, her manipulation wasn't working. Ryan had recovered some of his composure. He had his arms crossed again and was looking at me with contempt, with that look that clearly said I was a foolish old woman throwing a tantrum for no reason. A crazy old lady who didn't understand how the modern world worked. Generous. I repeated the word slowly, letting each syllable leave my mouth with care. Generous. As if it were a new concept I was trying to understand. You want to talk about generosity, Jennifer? Okay, let's talk about generosity then. Take a seat. This is going to take a moment. Jennifer slumped onto the sofa. Her legs weren't holding her up anymore. Ryan remained standing, but I could see him clench his jaw. He was furious. Furious because his stupid mother-in-law was daring to talk to them like this, to question them, to defend herself. I was generous when I opened the doors of this house 2 years ago. I began with a firm voice. When you two lost your apartment because Ryan lost his construction job, when you came knocking on my door on a Sunday night, with 4 suitcases and faces full of desperation, I was generous when I told you that you could stay here as long as you needed. Without paying rent, without paying utilities, without paying for food, everything free, while you got back on your feet financially. 2 years. It has been 2 years since that Sunday night when Jennifer and Ryan knocked on my door. 2 years that feel like an eternity. 2 years in which my life stopped being mine and became theirs. But to understand how we got to this moment, to this explosion in my living room, I need to go back to the beginning. I need to remember how everything was before they arrived, before my house became their territory. When my husband died 5 years ago, I thought I would die with him. 43 years of marriage aren't erased easily. 43 years of waking up next to the same person, of drinking coffee together every morning, of arguing about nonsense and laughing about anything. He died on a Tuesday afternoon. Heart attack. Quick, painless, the doctors said. But for me, it was as if half my soul had been ripped out. Jennifer came to the funeral. She cried. She hugged me. She told me everything would be okay, that she would be there for me always. Always. That word again. But after the funeral, after we buried her father at the city cemetery, she went back to her life. She went back to her apartment with Ryan. She went back to her job at the clothing store. And I stayed alone in this house that suddenly seemed too big and too quiet. The first few months were the hardest. I would wake up and for a second forget he was gone. I would brew 2 cups of coffee out of habit. I would cook portions for 2 people. I would speak out loud expecting an answer that never came. The loneliness was a physical weight on my chest, something that crushed me every morning when I woke up, but I learned to live with it. I learned to be alone. I joined a knitting group at the parish. I started walking in the mornings at the park. I made friends, women like me, widows, alone but not broken. Barbara became my best friend. She understood the pain without needing words. We drank coffee together twice a week. We went to the farmer's market together on Saturdays, a simple but dignified life. Jennifer called me every now and then, once a month maybe. Short conversations. How are you, Mom? Good, sweetie. Need anything? No, everything is fine. Did you eat today? Yes, honey. Take care. You too. And we would hang up. That was our relationship, distant but cordial. I didn't ask her for anything. She didn't offer anything. We were both comfortable with that distance. Until that Sunday night, November. It was cold. I was watching television when the doorbell rang. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there they were. Jennifer and Ryan, with 4 large suitcases, with red eyes, with desperation drawn on their faces. Mom, Jennifer could barely speak. Mom, we lost the apartment. Ryan lost his job 3 months ago and we couldn't pay the rent. The landlord kicked us out. We have nowhere to go. Can we stay here? Just for a few weeks. Just until Ryan finds another job. Please. Mom, please. What is a mother supposed to do in that moment? Shut the door on her daughter? Leave her on the street? Of course I opened the door. Of course I let them in. Of course I told them to stay as long as they needed. Because that is what mothers do. They protect, they care, they sacrifice. I gave them the guest room, the room where Jennifer had slept when she was a child. It still had some of her old toys stored in the closet. I made the bed with clean sheets for them. I told them to make themselves at home. Those were my exact words. Make yourselves at home. The first few days were good. Jennifer helped me in the kitchen. Ryan looked for jobs on the internet. We ate dinner together. We talked. I felt less lonely. I thought maybe this was what I needed. Company. Family under my roof again. The house didn't feel so empty anymore. But the weeks passed. And Ryan didn't find a job. Or he wasn't really looking. He started sleeping in late. Staying in his pajamas all day, watching television in my living room. Eating what I cooked without even lifting his plate. Jennifer kept working. But she would come home tired and in a bad mood. She didn't help me with anything anymore. We didn't talk anymore. 1 month turned into 2, 2 into 3. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to pressure them. I didn't want Jennifer to think they weren't welcome. I didn't want to be alone again, so I stayed quiet. And they got more comfortable every day. It was gradual. So gradual I almost didn't notice it until it was too late. Ryan started giving me orders, small ones at first. Miss Margaret, make chicken for dinner tonight. Miss Margaret, wash this shirt for tomorrow. Miss Margaret, turn down the TV volume. I'm sleeping, and I obeyed. Because I didn't want trouble, because I didn't want them to leave. Jennifer started treating me differently too. I wasn't her mother anymore. I was someone who was there to serve them. Mom, I need you to iron this blouse. Mom, why isn't there any coffee? Mom, clean the bathroom, it's dirty. Her tone changed. She didn't ask anymore. She ordered, as if I were her employee. 6 months after they arrived, Ryan finally got a job. Construction again. But they didn't talk about leaving. They didn't mention looking for another apartment. They simply stayed, and I didn't ask. Because I was afraid. Afraid of the answer. Afraid of being left alone again. Afraid of losing my daughter. The money Ryan earned didn't come into the house. Nothing for food, nothing for utilities, nothing to help with expenses. They bought new clothes, they went out to eat, they bought a used car, but in my house, they didn't leave a single dollar. My Social Security checks covered everything, $800 a month that barely stretched enough now that there were 3 of us. And I kept quiet. I kept accepting it. I kept hoping that someday Jennifer would go back to being my daughter, that someday she would look at me with affection again, that someday she would say, "Thank you. Mom, we love you. Mom." But that day never came. Christmas of the first year arrived. I thought maybe we could celebrate together, that maybe it would be like before. But they went to Ryan's parents' house. They left me alone. They didn't even invite me. I was alone on Christmas again. I ate leftovers in front of the TV. That's how the second year passed. A full year of being invisible in my own home, of cooking, cleaning, washing, of paying the bills while they spent their money on themselves, of hearing their laughter in the bedroom while I went to bed alone in mine, of pretending everything was fine when inside I was dying little by little, until 3 months ago, until the day everything changed, the day I discovered the truth. It was a Tuesday morning, early September. The air was already starting to cool, announcing autumn. Jennifer and Ryan had left early. She went to her job at the store. He went to the construction site where he worked. I was alone at home like always, cleaning, tidying up the messes they left every day, picking up dirty clothes from the floor, washing breakfast dishes that no one else washed. I went into their room to change the sheets. I did it every week. They never asked, but I did it anyway, because that's how I was raised, because a clean house is a dignified house. I stripped the sheets from the bed. I put them in the laundry basket. I went to the closet to get clean sheets. And then I saw it. The closet drawer was ajar, not completely open, but enough to see that there were papers inside, folded papers, documents. Normally I didn't go through their things. I respected their privacy, but something about the way those papers were hidden caught my attention, as if they didn't want anyone to see them, as if they were a secret. My hand trembled as I reached for the drawer. A part of me said not to open it, to respect their space, that what you don't know can't hurt you. But another part, a stronger part, needed to know, needed to understand why my daughter treated me the way she did, why Ryan spoke to me with such contempt. I needed answers. I opened the drawer completely. I took out the papers. There were several documents. I unfolded them with shaking hands. The first was a copy of the deed to my house. My house. The one I had paid for with my husband over 30 years of work. The one that was in my name. Only in my name. Why did they have a copy? I kept looking. The second document froze my blood. It was a sales contract. For my house, a contract where my signature appeared, selling the house to Jennifer for $1, a symbolic dollar. The date on the contract was from 6 months ago, but I had never signed that. I had never sold my house. I had never put my signature on that paper. I looked closer. The signature looked like mine, very similar, but it wasn't mine. Someone had forged it. Someone had copied my signature and put it on that document. My own daughter. My own blood. She had forged my signature to steal my house. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the papers. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. I sat on the edge of their bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. Trying to calm down. Trying to understand what I had just discovered. There were more papers. I went through them all. There were printouts of web pages about nursing homes. Cheap nursing homes. The cheapest in the city. With photos of small, sad rooms. Rooms shared with other people. Community bathrooms. Dining halls with long tables full of abandoned old people. And there were handwritten notes in the margins. Jennifer's handwriting. Notes about prices. $400 a month. $500 a month. Comments like this one is the cheapest or accepts Social Security as payment. They were planning to commit me. They were planning to take my house and put me in a nursing home. To get rid of me like I was trash. Like I was an old piece of furniture that wasn't useful anymore. And everything was calculated. Everything was thought out. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a crazy idea. It was a plan. A detailed plan they had been preparing for months. I kept searching through the papers with trembling hands. I found more things. Printed WhatsApp conversations between Jennifer and Ryan. Conversations where they talked about me. Where they laughed at me. Where they planned my future without consulting me. Your mom is so dumb. She doesn't suspect a thing. That's what Ryan had written. I know. She'll do anything not to be alone. She's pathetic. That's what Jennifer had replied. My daughter. My only daughter. When do you think we can get her out of here? Ryan asked. Soon. The document is already ready. We just need to record it. Once the house is in my name, we can put her in the cheapest home and sell the house. With that money, we can buy something better in the city. What if she refuses to go to the nursing home? She can't refuse. Once I sell the house, she won't have options. Besides, we'll tell her it's for her own good. That she's too old to live alone. That she needs care. She'll swallow it just like she swallowed everything else. I read those words over and over again. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't process that my own daughter had written that she thought that of me. Dumb, pathetic, old. As if I weren't a person. As if I didn't have feelings. As if I didn't matter. There were more conversations. More plans. They talked about what to do with my furniture. With my things. With the memories of a lifetime. Most of it is old junk. We'll throw it all out, Ryan said. And Jennifer agreed. Everything to the trash. My photos, my memories, the life I built with my husband, all disposable. There was also research on how to declare someone mentally incompetent, how to obtain power of attorney over an elderly person, how to take charge of a senior's finances. They were exploring all options, every possible way to take everything from me, to control me, to eliminate me from their lives while keeping what was mine. I sat on that bed for I don't know how long, the papers scattered around me, tears running down my cheeks, silent tears, tears of deep pain, pain that was born from the center of my chest and expanded through my entire body, a physical pain, real, as if they had stabbed a knife into my heart. How had it come to this? At what moment had my daughter become this person? At what moment had love transformed into greed? When did I stop being her mother to become an obstacle, something to eliminate? I thought about all the times I had carried her when she was a baby, all the sleepless nights when she was sick, all the sacrifices I made to give her a good education, to buy her new clothes. So she would never lack anything. I worked double shifts at the hospital for years to pay for her college. I skipped meals so she could eat well. I wore the same clothes for years so she could be fashionable. And all for what? So she could call me dumb now. Pathetic. So she could plan to lock me in a nursing home and throw my memories in the trash. So she could forge my signature and steal my house. The house her father and I built with so much effort. The house where she grew up, where we celebrated her birthdays, where we bandaged her scraped knees, where we dried her tears. That house they now wanted to snatch from me. I heard a noise outside, a car parking. I got scared. I quickly put all the papers back exactly as I had found them. I closed the drawer. I made sure everything was in its place. They couldn't know that I knew. Not yet. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide what to do with this information that had just destroyed my soul. I left the room. I went to the kitchen. I washed my face in the sink. I took a deep breath. When Jennifer walked through the door minutes later, I was peeling potatoes for dinner, like every day, as if nothing had happened, as if my world hadn't collapsed that morning. But something had changed. Something inside me had broken. And at the same time, something new had been born. Something cold, something calculating, something that wasn't going to stay quiet. Not this time. The following days were the strangest of my life. I kept cooking. I kept cleaning. I kept obeying every order they gave me. But inside, something had changed completely. I was no longer the same woman. I was no longer the naive mother who believed love solved everything. Now I was another person. Someone who had seen the truth. Someone who knew exactly what they thought of her. And that person wasn't going to stand by with arms crossed. The first night after discovering the documents, I could barely sleep. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, calculating, trying to decide what to do. A part of me wanted to confront them immediately, scream at them, kick them out of my house that very night. But another part, the smarter part, told me to wait, to think clearly, that if I acted on impulse, they would have the advantage. They had the forged document. They could use it. They could complicate my life in ways I didn't even imagine. I needed a plan. I needed to be smarter than them. I needed to protect myself legally and emotionally, and I needed to do it without them suspecting anything. If they discovered I knew, they might accelerate their plans. They might record the fake document before I could stop them. They might take me to some corrupt doctor to declare me incompetent. I couldn't risk it. The next day I called Barbara, my friend, my confidant, the only person in the world I could trust completely. I told her I needed to see her urgently. We met at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood, a place where no one knew us, where we could talk without anyone listening. When I told her everything, when I showed her the photos I had taken of the documents with my cell phone, Barbara turned pale. Her hands shook as she held the phone. Her eyes filled with tears of rage. "Margaret, this is horrible. This is a crime. You have to report them. You have to go to the police right now." But I had already thought about that. Going to the police was risky. The forged document looked very real. What if the police didn't believe me? What if they thought I was a confused old woman? What if Jennifer cried and said I had given her permission to make the document and was now regretting it? I needed something more solid. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed legal protection before making any move. Barbara understood. She knew a lawyer. Patrick, a strict, honest man who had helped her sister with an inheritance problem years ago. Someone trustworthy. Someone who wouldn't talk to anyone about my case. She gave me his number. That same afternoon, I called him from Barbara's phone. I didn't want a record of the call on my own cell. Jennifer checked my phone sometimes. She said it was to make sure I wasn't being scammed by spam calls. Now I understood she was actually watching me. Mr. Patrick agreed to see me the next day. I went to his office downtown, an old but dignified building. His office was on the 3rd floor. It was small but tidy. Law books lined the walls. The desk was full of papers but organized in perfect stacks. Mr. Patrick was a man of about 50. Gray hair, thick glasses, calm voice. He welcomed me kindly and offered me coffee. I told him everything, every detail. I showed him the photos of the documents. I explained how Jennifer and Ryan treated me, how they had come to my house, how they had never paid for anything, how they planned to commit me to a nursing home. As I spoke, Mr. Patrick took notes. His expression was serious, professional. He didn't look at me with pity but with respect, as if my words mattered, as if I mattered. When I finished speaking, Mr. Patrick put his pen down on the desk and looked me directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Margaret, what your daughter and son-in-law are doing is forgery. It is a serious felony. They could go to prison for this. But you are right to be cautious. If that document is recorded before we act, even if it is fake, it will complicate things for us legally. We need to move fast, but smart." He explained the plan. First, we needed to secure my house legally. Draft a real, legal, and irrefutable document establishing that the house was mine and mine alone. A document making it clear I had never sold anything to anyone. Second, we needed additional evidence of their intentions. The photos I had taken were good, but we needed more. Audio recordings, if possible. More documentary proof. Third, we needed witnesses. People who could testify that I was in full possession of my mental faculties, that I wasn't being manipulated, that I wasn't confused. "How much is all this going to cost?" I asked. I had some money saved. Not much. $800 I had kept in a bank account Jennifer didn't know about. Money I had gathered penny by penny over the years. My emergency fund. And this was definitely an emergency. Mr. Patrick looked at me gently. "Mrs. Margaret, this is going to cost around $1,500. I know it's a lot of money. We can set up a payment plan if you need. But we need to start now. Every day that passes is a risk." I had 800. I needed 700 more. I told him I would pay half now and the rest in 2 months when I received my next Social Security checks. Mr. Patrick agreed. He pulled out the necessary papers. He explained every document before I signed. I liked that he explained everything to me. That he didn't treat me as if I were stupid, as if I couldn't understand. The first document was a legal affidavit stating my house was my exclusive property, that I had never sold or donated it to anyone, that any document stating otherwise was fraudulent. I signed with a steady hand. The date was recorded, September 12th, a day I would never forget. Mr. Patrick also recommended I hire a private investigator, someone who could follow Jennifer and Ryan, who could find out if they had more plans than I already knew about, who could document their activities. It was expensive, $300 a week, but Mr. Patrick knew someone who would give me a discount. A woman, Hannah, excellent at her job, discreet, reliable. I accepted everything. I had no choice. This was the moment to act or lose everything. I used the $800 I had saved. I gave $400 to Mr. Patrick as a retainer. I hired Hannah for 2 weeks with the other $400. I would have to live very tight next month. I would have to invent excuses for why there was no money for certain things in the house. But it didn't matter. This was more important. Hannah started her work immediately. She asked me to act completely normal at home, not to change anything in my routine, not to give them any reason to suspect. She gave me a small recording device, the size of a lighter. She taught me how to use it, how to hide it in my pocket, how to activate it when they spoke, especially when they talked about me, about their plans, about the house, about anything relevant. The following days were pure acting. Every morning I got up and pretended to be the same Margaret as always, the submissive Margaret, the Margaret who obeyed, the Margaret who knew nothing. I made breakfast. I cleaned. I did laundry. I served dinner. And all the while, the recording device was in my pocket, capturing every cruel word, every derogatory comment, every plan they discussed, thinking I didn't understand anything. Ryan talked on the phone with his friends, saying things like, "Yeah, we're living rent-free. The old lady pays for everything. She's stupid but useful." I recorded. Jennifer talked to her friend Susan, saying, "My mom is so naive. She thinks we love her. She doesn't know we're just waiting for the moment to get her out of here." I recorded. They talked amongst themselves at night, thinking I wasn't listening. "I think we can file the document next month. She doesn't suspect a thing." I recorded everything. I also started acting a little more forgetful than usual. I left things in the wrong places, on purpose. I asked the same thing twice. I got confused with dates. I wanted them to think I was really losing my mind, that their plan to declare me incompetent would be easy. The more confident they were, the more careless they would be. And I needed them to lower their guard. It worked. Ryan started making comments. Her mom is getting worse every day. The other day she asked me 3 times what day it was. Jennifer would reply, I know. It's perfect. When we go to the doctor, he'll see she really needs help. No one will question us committing her. Each word was a dagger in my heart. But each word was also evidence. Evidence that was being recorded. Evidence that one day would cost them very dearly. Hannah brought me reports every 3 days. She told me where Jennifer and Ryan went, who they met with, what they did. She discovered Ryan was spending money on sports betting, that Jennifer bought expensive clothes with credit cards she couldn't pay off, that both had debts, lots of debt, over $20,000 between the two of them. That's why they needed my house. Not just out of greed, but out of economic desperation. She also discovered something else. They had consulted a crooked notary, someone who, for $1,000, would notarize the fake document without asking too many questions. They had already paid $500 down. They planned to complete the payment and file the document before Christmas, before the end of the year, to start the new year as owners of my house. I didn't have much time. 2 months, maybe. 2 months to gather all the proof, to protect myself legally, to prepare my counterattack. 2 months where every day I had to pretend. Every day I had to smile, while inside I plotted their downfall. Every day I had to be the perfect victim, while in reality I was becoming something completely different, a woman who wasn't going to let herself be destroyed without a fight. October passed slow like cold molasses. Every day was a silent torture. Every morning I woke up with the weight of the deception on my shoulders. I had to feign dementia. I had to act weak. I had to be the perfect old lady for their plan. And I did it well. Too well. Sometimes it scared me how good of an actress I had become. I wondered if this new Margaret had always been inside me, waiting for the moment to come out. The recordings piled up. I already had more than 20 documented conversations. Conversations where Jennifer and Ryan talked about me as if I were an animal, as if I were a problem to solve. Mr. Patrick reviewed every recording. He took meticulous notes. He told me we had a solid case, very solid, but we needed the perfect moment to act. We couldn't rush. Hannah kept investigating. She brought me more devastating information. Ryan had a mistress, a 30-year-old woman named Emily who worked at a bar. He had promised her he would have money soon, a lot of money, that they would buy a house together, that they would leave this town. Jennifer didn't know anything. Or maybe she did know and didn't care. Maybe their marriage was already dead long ago and they only stayed together for convenience, for greed, for my house. I used all this information to fuel my rage, to not waver, because there were moments, I confess, when my mother's heart wanted to give in. There were moments when I saw Jennifer sitting on the sofa and remembered the little girl she had been, the 7-year-old girl who ran to hug me when I got home from work, the teenager who told me her secrets, the young woman who introduced me to Ryan with eyes full of love. Where had that Jennifer gone? When had she turned into this stranger planning to destroy me? But then I would listen to the recordings again. I would hear her voice saying I was pathetic, that I was a nuisance, that she couldn't wait to get rid of me. And my mother's heart would harden again. It would turn to stone, to ice, into something that no longer felt pain, only determination. In mid-October, Mr. Patrick called me with a proposal. It was time to think about the counterattack, not just defending ourselves, but attacking, teaching them a lesson they would never forget, exposing them publicly, ensuring the world knew exactly who Jennifer and Ryan Evans were. What do you have in mind? I asked. We were sitting in his office. Outside it was raining. The sound of the rain against the window was like a drum beating the rhythm of my revenge. Mr. Patrick leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Margaret, they are planning something for Christmas. According to the information we have, they want to have everything ready before the end of the year. What if we give them what they want? What if we let them believe they won? And then, in the moment of their triumph, we show them the truth, in front of everyone, in front of their family, in front of their friends. Total public exposure. I liked the idea. I liked it a lot. There was something poetic about it, letting them climb to the peak of their arrogance, letting them feel invincible, letting them believe they had completely defeated me, and then throwing them from that height, letting them crash against the ground of reality, against the consequences of their actions. How would we do it? I asked. My voice sounded different, colder, more calculating. Barbara, who was with me at that meeting, looked at me with something resembling fear in her eyes. I think in that moment she realized her friend had changed forever. Mr. Patrick explained the plan. It was brilliant. It was cruel. It was perfect. We would let Ryan invite his family to my house for Christmas. We wouldn't resist. Well, we would offer initial resistance so it seemed real, so they wouldn't suspect. But eventually, we would give in. We would give them permission. We would help them plan the celebration. We would make them believe they had finally broken me, that I had finally accepted my place as the submissive old lady they wanted me to be. And during that Christmas dinner, with all his relatives present, with his whole family watching, we would expose everything. We would show the forged documents. We would play the recordings. We would present the proof of their debts, of Ryan's mistress, of their plans to commit me to a nursing home. Everything in front of everyone, total public humiliation. But there is something else, Mr. Patrick said with a small smile. Something that will guarantee they can never hurt you. We are going to have you donate this house to a charity foundation. A legal, irrevocable donation that will go into effect the day of your death. The house will remain yours while you live. You can live there until your final days. But when you are gone, the house will become a shelter for abused women. In your memory, tears ran down my cheeks. Not from sadness, but from something deeper. From justice. From dignity recovered. Jennifer would have nothing. Ryan would have nothing. Their entire plan would have been for nothing. And something good would come out of all this pain. Something that would help other women, other mothers, other widows who needed a safe place. Let's do it, I said. Let's do it all. The following days were of intense preparation. Mr. Patrick prepared all the donation documents. We visited the Charity Foundation, a small but serious organization that helped women in difficult situations. I told them my story. They cried with me. They accepted the donation with gratitude and respect. We signed everything. It was legally recorded. The house was no longer an inheritance. It was no longer something Jennifer could ever claim. We also prepared the presentation for Christmas night. Mr. Patrick hired a technician who would discreetly install a projector and speakers in my living room, something that could show videos and play audio. Barbara would be in charge of operating it during dinner. She would be there, as my guest, as my friend. No one would suspect a thing. Hannah finished her investigation. She handed me a complete report, 50 pages of evidence, photos of Ryan with his mistress, records of his betting, documents of his debts, emails between Jennifer and the crooked notary. Everything organized, everything documented, everything ready to be presented. At the end of October, Ryan mentioned casually during dinner that his family wanted to see the house, that it would be nice to spend Christmas all together. Jennifer looked at me expecting me to say no, expecting me to object so she could threaten me again, so she could use her favorite weapon, the threat of leaving forever. But I smiled, a tired smile, defeated. Exactly the smile they wanted to see. Okay, I said with a soft voice, if that makes you happy. We can spend Christmas here. With his family. Jennifer and Ryan looked at each other surprised. They didn't expect it to be so easy. Really, Mom? Jennifer asked with suspicion in her voice. Really, I replied. You two are right. It's Christmas. It's time for family. Let them all come. I will cook. I will prepare the house. It will be a memorable Christmas. I wasn't lying. It would be memorable. But not in the way they imagined. Ryan got excited. He started making calls that same night, inviting his uncles, his cousins, his friends. 30 people confirmed, 30 witnesses to what was coming. Perfect. November arrived with intense cold. I began the preparations. I bought Christmas decorations, more than I would normally buy. Lights, garlands, a big tree. I wanted everything to look festive. I wanted everything to look perfect, because this would be my last Christmas in this house as the Margaret I had been. After this, everything would change. Jennifer helped me with the decorations. For the first time in months, she seemed to be in a good mood. She laughed. She talked with me. She almost seemed like the daughter I remembered. But I didn't let myself be fooled anymore. I knew her joy wasn't about being with me. It was because she believed she had won. She believed she had finally broken me, that she was finally the owner of this house, that her plan was working. Let her believe, I told myself every night. Let her enjoy these weeks. Because after Christmas, after the mask falls, she will never smile like that again. Ryan was different too. Kinder. He even helped me move the tree into the living room. He asked me if I needed anything from the grocery store. Pure acting. Both of them were acting. And I was acting too. 3 actors in a play. But only I knew the real ending of the story. Mr. Patrick visited me weekly. We went over the plan again and again. Every detail, every moment, every word, I would say. We had a script. I rehearsed my speech in front of the mirror, again and again, until every word sounded perfect, until every pause was exact, until my voice didn't shake anymore. Barbara rehearsed too. She would handle the technology. She would know exactly when to show each document, when to play each audio clip, when to project each photo. We had secret signals. If I touched my necklace, she would know it was time for the next slide. If I drank water, time for the next audio. Everything choreographed like a ballet. December arrived faster than expected. The streets filled with Christmas lights. Neighbors decorated their houses. Stores played carols. Everyone was in celebration mode. And so was I. But my celebration would be different. My celebration would be justice. 10 days before Christmas, Ryan received a call. His uncle Omar couldn't make it. Health problem. 29 people then. Still enough witnesses. Still enough of an audience for the show that was about to start. I cooked, I prepared, I cleaned, I decorated, and I smiled. I smiled all the time. A smile Jennifer interpreted as resignation, as defeat, but which was actually anticipation. It was the smile of someone who knows justice is close, very close. December 24th. The day had arrived, finally. I woke up at 5 in the morning, although I hadn't really slept. I had spent the night staring at my bedroom ceiling, mentally reviewing every step of the plan, every word I would say, every moment that was about to come. My heart was beating fast, but it wasn't fear. It was something different. It was the calm before the storm. I got out of bed. My knees creaked as always. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. A 72-year-old woman looked back at me. Gray hair pulled back in a simple bun. Wrinkles around the eyes. Hands spotted by age. But my eyes shone with something new. With determination. With strength. With justice. I dressed with care. I chose my best dress. The dark blue one my husband had given me on our last anniversary together. I put on the pearl necklace that had been my mother's. I put on light makeup. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted to look strong. Because today wasn't the day of the victim. Today was the day of the warrior. I went down to the kitchen at 6. Jennifer and Ryan were still sleeping. The house was silent. I started cooking. I had planned a full menu: roast turkey, mashed potatoes, salad, homemade bread, apple pie. Food for 30 people. My hands moved automatically. I had cooked these recipes 1,000 times. But today, every movement had a special meaning. This would be the last time I cooked for Jennifer. The last dinner we would share as mother and daughter. Barbara arrived at 8 in the morning. She brought a small suitcase with the equipment. The projector, the cables, the laptop with all the files. We brought everything into my room discreetly. Jennifer woke up and greeted her without suspecting anything. Barbara was my friend. It was normal for her to be there for Christmas dinner. No one questioned her presence. At 10, Barbara and I set everything up while Jennifer and Ryan went out to buy drinks. We placed the projector on a high shelf where it wouldn't be noticed. We connected the cables behind the furniture. We tested that everything worked. The white screen we hung on the wall, we said, was to project family photos during dinner, an idea Jennifer found charming. She didn't know the photos they would see would be very different from the ones she imagined. The technician Mr. Patrick had sent came disguised as a delivery driver. He verified that everything was working perfectly. He showed Barbara and me the controls one more time. He gave me a small wireless microphone so my voice would be heard clearly when the moment came. I hid it in the pearl necklace. No one would notice it. At 1 in the afternoon, the guests began to arrive. First came Ryan's parents, Herman and Alfred Evans. An older couple, humble appearance. They greeted me with respect. They thanked me for opening my home. They seemed like good people. I felt bad they had to witness what was coming, but it was necessary. They needed to know what kind of son they had raised. Then the uncles arrived, the cousins, the friends, the house filled with people, with noise, with laughter. Everyone brought gifts. Everyone brought extra food. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there, to celebrate together. They had no idea they were about to witness something completely different from a celebration. Ryan acted like the perfect host. He introduced everyone. He showed off the house as if it were his, as if he had lived there his whole life. He said things like, "This is our living room. Our garden is a bit neglected, but we'll fix it in the spring." Ours. As if I didn't exist. As if this house didn't have an owner. Jennifer was also playing her part, the attentive daughter. She brought me water. She asked me if I needed help in the kitchen. She introduced me to Ryan's relatives as my mom, who is so generous she opened her house to us. Generous. That word again. But her tone was condescending, like when you talk about a child who does something nice without really understanding what they're doing. I smiled. I nodded. I served food. I refilled glasses. I acted like the perfect hostess, like the sweet grandmother everyone expected. And all the while, the microphone hidden in my necklace waited. The projector hidden on the shelf waited. Justice waited. At 4 in the afternoon, we all sat down to eat. We had pushed all the tables in the house together. The dining room table, the kitchen table, even a folding table I took out of the garage. 30 people seated, 30 pairs of eyes looking at the golden turkey in the center, 30 mouths savoring the food I had prepared with my own hands. Ryan stood up. He raised his glass. He wanted to make a toast. Of course he wanted to. It was his moment to shine, his moment to be the important man in front of his family. Everyone went silent. Everyone looked at him. "I want to thank my mother-in-law, Margaret," he said with a strong voice, "for opening her house to us, for allowing us to celebrate this Christmas here. I know it hasn't been easy for her to have so many people, but she understands how important family is." Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone said cheers. Everyone drank. I raised my glass too. I drank too. And I smiled. Because his toast was perfect. It was the perfect moment to begin. When everyone sat back down, when the noise of conversation started again, I stood up. Everyone looked at me surprised. The quiet little granny was standing, wanting to speak. How charming! "I also want to say something," I said with a soft voice. Everyone went silent again. Jennifer looked at me with a nervous smile. Ryan frowned slightly. But neither could do anything without seeming rude, without ruining the facade of the happy family they had built. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," I continued. "It's nice to have the house full again. Since my husband died 5 years ago, this house has been very empty, very quiet. So when Jennifer and Ryan came to live with me 2 years ago, I thought the loneliness was over. I thought I would have family again." My voice cracked slightly. I wasn't acting now. This emotion was real. But I paused. Everyone was attentive now. The whole table was looking at me. But I learned that family isn't just living under the same roof. Family is respect. It is love. It is honesty. I touched my necklace. The signal for Barbara. And I'm afraid I have discovered that not everyone here understands that. Jennifer went pale. Ryan stopped chewing. Both looked at me with wide eyes. They were starting to understand that something wasn't right. That this wasn't the thank you speech they expected. The white screen on the wall lit up. The projector started working. The first image appeared. It was the forged document. My supposed signature selling the house to Jennifer for $1. Enlarged. Visible to everyone. "This," I said, pointing to the screen. "This is a document I found 3 months ago, hidden in my daughter's bedroom. A document that says I sold this house to Jennifer. A document I never signed. A document whose signature was forged." The silence in the room was absolute. Nobody breathed. Everyone looked at the screen. Then they looked at me. Then they looked at Jennifer and Ryan, trying to understand what was happening. "Mom," Jennifer tried to stand up. Her voice trembled. Mom, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Sit down, Jennifer, I said with a firm voice. I haven't finished. And for the first time in 2 years, my daughter obeyed me. She sat down. Because the tone of my voice allowed no argument, because everyone was looking at her, because she had no choice. I drank water, the signal for the next element. Barbara started playing the first audio. Jennifer's voice filled the room. Your mom is so dumb. She doesn't suspect a thing. And Ryan's voice responding. I know. She'll do anything not to be alone. She's pathetic. The faces around the table changed. Horror, shock, disbelief. Ryan's parents looked at their son as if he were a stranger. The uncles murmured among themselves. The cousins looked down, ashamed. There is more, I said. Much more. And the night was just beginning. The second audio started playing. This time it was a longer conversation. More detailed. Crueler. Ryan's voice asking when they could get me out of the house. Jennifer's voice answering that soon. That the document was already ready. That they just needed to record it. That once the house was in her name, they could put me in the cheapest nursing home and sell the property. That with that money they would buy something better in the city. Each word was a hammer striking the silence of the room. Each sentence made the guests' faces contract more in gestures of disgust. Herminia, Ryan's mother, had her hands over her mouth. Her eyes were full of tears. Alfred, his father, looked at his son with an expression I had never seen on a father's face. Absolute disappointment. Deep shame. Turn that off, Ryan screamed finally. He got up from his chair so abruptly he knocked it backward. This is ridiculous. Those recordings are fake. They are edited. His voice shook. His face was red with fury and panic. He knew he was being exposed, that his mask was falling in front of everyone. Fake? I asked calmly. You mean that isn't your voice, Ryan? That it isn't you speaking? Everyone in this room can recognize your voice, my daughter's voice. Or are you going to say someone hired actors to imitate your voices exactly? Mom, please. Jennifer had started to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage, of humiliation. Please, stop this. It's Christmas. This is embarrassing. How can you do this in front of Ryan's whole family? Embarrassing? I repeated. For whom, Jennifer? For you? For Ryan? Because for me, what was embarrassing was discovering that my own daughter planned to rob me of my house, that she planned to lock me in a nursing home, that she called me dumb and pathetic behind my back. That was embarrassing. I touched my necklace again. The next image appeared on the screen. It was the printed WhatsApp messages, enlarged, readable for everyone. Conversations between Jennifer and Ryan. Conversations where they laughed at me, where they planned my future without consulting me, where they calculated how much money they would get from the sale of my house. One of Ryan's aunts, a woman named Rita, stood up. This can't be real, she said, looking at Ryan. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you weren't planning to do this to your mother-in-law, to the woman who gave you a roof when you had nothing. Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. It was like watching a fish out of water, desperate, drowning in his own lie. I drank water again. Barbara switched to the next series of documents. These were different. They were the financial records Hannah had obtained. Ryan's debts. Over $12,000 in credit cards. $5,000 in personal loans. $3,000 in sports betting. All projected on the screen for everyone to see. My son-in-law has a lot of debt, I explained with a calm voice. Debts he cannot pay with his salary. Debts that grow every month. That is why he needed my house. Not out of love for his family, not out of wanting to take care of me, but because he needed money desperately. Enough, Ryan screamed again. You have no right to show my private information. This is illegal. I'm going to sue you. I laughed. It was a short, dry laugh, but it was genuine. Sue me? You? The man who forged my signature? The man who planned to steal my house? Please, Ryan, do it. Sue me. I would love to see you explain all this in front of a judge. The next image appeared. This one was more painful to show, but necessary. They were photos of Ryan with another woman, photos taken by Hannah during her investigation. Ryan kissing a woman at a bar. Ryan entering a cheap motel with her. Ryan hugging her in a parking lot. Dates and times marked on each photo. Jennifer let out a choked scream. She stood up, staring at the photos, staring at Ryan. "Who is she?" Her voice was a broken whisper. "Who is that woman? Ryan?" Ryan didn't answer. He looked at the photos with horror. Then he looked at Jennifer. Then he looked at the whole family watching them. His world was crumbling piece by piece, and I was the one holding the hammer. "Her name is Emily," I answered, when Ryan couldn't. "She works at a bar downtown. Your husband has promised her that soon they will have money, that they will buy a house together, that they will leave this city. Of course, that money would come from the sale of my house that he planned to steal." Jennifer slumped into her chair. Her face was white as paper. Tears ran down her cheeks, but they were no longer tears of rage. They were tears of real pain, of betrayal. She had betrayed her mother, and her husband had betrayed her. Justice had many faces that night. The guests began to murmur louder. Some got up to leave. They didn't want to be part of this. They didn't want to witness anymore. But I raised my hand. "Wait, please," I said. "I still haven't finished. I need everyone to hear the end. Because this isn't just about exposing them. This is about making sure they can never do this to anyone else." Everyone sat back down slowly. Some out of curiosity, others out of respect for me, others because they felt they owed it to me after witnessing my exposed humiliation. I touched my necklace one last time. The final image appeared on the screen. It was a legal document. The donation document I had signed with Mr. Patrick. The document establishing that my house would be donated to a charity foundation at the moment of my death, that it would never be anyone's inheritance, that it could never be sold or claimed by Jennifer or by any other person. "This house," I said, pointing to the screen, "this house that my husband and I built with 40 years of work, this house where we raised our daughter, this house that Jennifer and Ryan planned to steal from me, this house is no longer mine to inherit. I have donated this property to a foundation that helps abused women. When I die, this house will become a shelter, a safe place for women who need protection, a place where other mothers, other widows, other women can find peace." Jennifer looked up. Her eyes were red. "What?" Her voice was barely audible. "What did you do?" "I did what I had to do to protect myself," I answered. "I did what I should have done a long time ago." I stood up, dignified, firm. "Now I want all of you to hear this very clearly. Jennifer and Ryan have 1 week to get out of my house, 7 days to pack their things and find another place to live. If they don't leave voluntarily, I have a court order ready to evict them. I also have all this proof ready to file criminal charges for forgery, charges that could send them to prison." Ryan took a step toward me. His face showed pure rage. "You?" he began to say with a threatening voice. But Alfred, his father, stopped him. He stood up and grabbed his son by the arm. "Don't you dare," he told him with a hard voice. "Don't you dare get close to her. You have already done enough damage." His father, a man of nearly 80 years, looked at his son with a mixture of shame and sadness that broke the heart. Herminia also stood up. She approached me. She took my hands in hers. "Mrs. Margaret," she said with tears in her eyes, "I am so sorry. We didn't know anything about this. If we had known—" Her voice broke. I couldn't keep talking. "It's not your fault," I told her softly. "You didn't know. But now you know. Now everyone knows." One by one, the guests began to stand up. Some approached me. They hugged me. They asked for forgiveness on Ryan's behalf. They told me I had done the right thing. Others left in silence, uncomfortable for having witnessed something so intimate and painful. In 20 minutes, the house was almost empty. Only Barbara, Jennifer, Ryan, and I remained. And the silence weighing like lead between us. The silence that followed the departure of the last guest was different from any other silence I had experienced in my life. It wasn't the comfortable silence of quiet mornings. It wasn't the melancholic silence of loneliness. It was a dense silence, heavy, full of truths that could no longer be hidden, full of consequences that were just beginning to materialize. Jennifer remained seated in her chair. She hadn't looked up since the last guests left. Her hands shook on the table. Her face was stained with tears and runny makeup. She seemed smaller than she was, as if all her arrogance, all her cruelty, had evaporated, leaving only the empty shell of what was once my daughter. Ryan was standing by the window. He was looking out at the dark street. His hands were shoved in his pockets. His shoulders were tense. I could see him clenching his jaw. How his breathing was irregular. Contained rage, humiliation processing, plans collapsing in his mind one after another. Barbara was by my side. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder, a gesture of silent support, of solidarity. She had witnessed everything. She had helped execute every step of the plan. And now she was here for whatever came next, to protect me if necessary. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jennifer looked up. She looked at me with swollen eyes. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why did you do it like that? Why in front of everyone? Why didn't you talk to me first? The question surprised me. After everything she had seen, after all the evidence presented, after hearing her own recorded words, she still didn't understand. She still thought she was the victim. Talk to you first? I repeated calmly. Jennifer, you planned to rob me of my house. You forged my signature. You planned to lock me in a nursing home against my will. And you ask me why I didn't talk to you first? Do you really not see it? I never, she started to say, but her voice faded. She couldn't finish the lie. The proof was irrefutable. There was no way to deny it. Ryan turned from the window. His face was red. His eyes shone with barely contained rage. This is a trap, he said with a sharp voice. You set a trap for us. You let us believe we had won just to humiliate us publicly. That is cruel. That is pure revenge. Revenge? I asked. Maybe. But it is also justice. You two played a game with me. You thought I was too old, too stupid, too desperate for company to notice. But I did notice, and I decided to play better than you. You had no right. Ryan took a step toward me. Barbara immediately moved closer, ready to intervene if necessary. You had no right to expose my private life, my debts, my... He stopped. He couldn't say the word. His mistress, his betrayal of his own wife. I had no right? My voice rose a little. And you had the right to forge my signature? To plan to steal my house? To conspire to lock me in a nursing home? To treat me like garbage in my own house for 2 years? Let's talk about rights, Ryan. He didn't answer. He clenched his fists, but he said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. There was no defense. There was no excuse. Only facts. Facts he couldn't deny. I walked to the table. I took out an envelope I had prepared with Mr. Patrick. I put it on the table in front of Jennifer. Inside this envelope are legal documents, I said with a firm voice. You have 7 days to vacate this house. If you cooperate, if you leave peacefully, I will not file criminal charges for the forgery. But if you refuse, if you cause trouble, I will hand everything over to the police. And believe me, with all the evidence I have, you will go to prison. Jennifer took the envelope with trembling hands. She opened it. She read the documents. Fresh tears ran down her cheeks. But these tears were different. They weren't from rage or shame. They were from realization, from finally understanding that she had lost everything. The house she coveted, the inheritance she expected, and the worst part, the relationship with her mother. She had lost that too. What if we have nowhere to go? She asked with a small voice, like a lost child. What are we supposed to do? You will do what all responsible adults do, I answered without emotion in my voice. You will look for an apartment. You will get jobs that pay better. You will learn to live within your means. You will learn to be independent, just like you should have done 2 years ago when you came here. We aren't your enemies, Mom. Jennifer tried one last time. We made mistakes. Yes, but we aren't monsters. We were just desperate. The debts, the pressure, we didn't know what to do. Desperate. The word came out harsher than I intended. Jennifer, I went hungry so you could eat when you were a child. I worked double shifts to pay for your college. I wore the same clothes for years so you could be fashionable. I know what real desperation is. And never, ever, did it occur to me to steal from someone, much less from my own family. Ryan let out a bitter laugh. How noble, he said sarcastically. Saint Margaret, the martyr, always sacrificing herself, always reminding us of everything she did. You know what? Maybe you were right. Maybe we did see you as stupid, because only a fool lets themselves be trampled on for 2 years without saying anything. His words were designed to hurt me, to make me doubt, to regain some power, but they didn't work anymore. They had no effect on me. You're right, I said calmly. I was a fool. I was a fool for believing a mother's love could change her daughter's heart. I was a fool for thinking that if I was generous, you would eventually treat me with respect. I was a fool for valuing company over dignity. But I am not that fool anymore. I learned the lesson. I turned to Barbara. Can you call Mr. Patrick? I said. Tell him everything went as planned, that we will need to proceed with the court order if they don't cooperate. Barbara nodded. She took out her phone and left the room to make the call. I stood there looking at Jennifer and Ryan, seeing them really for the first time in months, without the veil of maternal love, without the hope of reconciliation, just seeing them as what they were. Two people who had chosen the path of greed, who had chosen betrayal, and who now had to live with the consequences. We'll leave, Jennifer said finally. Her voice was empty, defeated. We'll leave tomorrow. You don't need the court order. Just… She paused. Is there any chance? Any way to fix this? For us to go back to being a family? I looked her in the eyes. Those eyes that once looked with childish love, that once saw me as her hero, her protector, her mother. But those eyes had changed, and my heart too. I don't know, Jennifer, I answered honestly. I don't know. Maybe someday, maybe in years, when you have truly understood what you did, when you have changed as a person, when you can look me in the eye and feel true remorse, not just regret for getting caught. Maybe then, but not now. Now I need you to leave. I need to heal. I need to reclaim my life, my house, my peace. Jennifer nodded slowly. She stood up. She walked toward the stairs without saying anything else. Ryan followed her after shooting me, one last look, full of hatred. I heard their footsteps going up the stairs. I heard their bedroom door close. And then I heard something else. Sobs, Jennifer crying in her room. A deep, heart-wrenching cry. A part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to go up, wanted to comfort her, wanted to hug her and tell her everything would be okay. But I didn't go up, because I knew if I did, if I gave in now, it would all have been in vain. I had to be strong. I had to stand firm. For me, for my dignity, for my future. Barbara returned. Mr. Patrick says he has everything ready, just in case you need it, she informed me. But he thinks they will leave without trouble, that the public humiliation was enough. Thank you, Barbara, I said, for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. She hugged me. We cried together. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of bitter victory. Because yes, I had won. I had protected my house. I had exposed the truth. I had regained my dignity, but the price had been high. The price had been my daughter. 3 days passed before Jennifer and Ryan left completely. 3 days of tense silence, of avoided steps, of glances that didn't meet. They packed in their room. I stayed in mine or in the kitchen. Barbara came every day to keep me company, to make sure everything went peacefully, so I wouldn't be alone in those last difficult moments. On the 3rd day, December 27th, they brought down the last boxes. Ryan loaded them into the car they had bought with the money they never used to help me. Jennifer stood in the living room, the same living room where everything had exploded 3 days ago, where her world had collapsed in front of 30 witnesses. She looked at me. She opened her mouth as if she were going to say something, but nothing came out. What could she say? I'm sorry? Goodbye? I love you? All those words sounded hollow now, empty of meaning. Finally, she just nodded. Once, a small gesture that could mean anything or nothing. Then she turned around and walked out the door. Ryan didn't even look at me. He simply closed the door behind them. The sound of that door closing was the loneliest and most liberating sound I had heard in my life. I stood in the empty living room. The Christmas decorations still hung on the walls. The tree still twinkled in the corner. But the house felt different. It felt mine again. After 2 years of feeling like a stranger in my own home, I could finally breathe. I could finally move without fear. Finally, I was free. Barbara stayed with me that night. We ordered Chinese takeout. We sat on the sofa watching an old movie. We didn't talk much. There was no need. She understood. She understood the relief mixed with sadness, the freedom mixed with loss, the justice mixed with pain. Because yes, I had won, but the cost had been my only daughter. Days turned into weeks. January arrived cold and silent. I started cleaning the room Jennifer and Ryan had occupied. I found things they had left behind. Old clothes, unimportant papers, a photo of Jennifer when she was a child. In the photo, she was 7 years old. She was smiling, showing a missing tooth. Her arms were around my neck. I was looking at her with such love, such pride, such hope for her future. I put the photo in a box. I couldn't throw it away, but I couldn't have it in sight either. Not yet. Maybe someday. Maybe when the pain was less sharp, when the good memories weren't so contaminated by the bad ones. Mr. Patrick came to visit me in February. He brought final documents. Everything was in order. The donation of the house was legally recorded. No one could change it. No one could claim it. When I died, this house would become a shelter for women in need. And that gave me peace, knowing that something good would come from all this pain, that my home would have a purpose beyond me. "Have you heard anything from your daughter?" Mr. Patrick asked carefully. "No," I replied. "Nothing. Not a call, not a message. It's as if she disappeared from my life completely." "How do you feel about that? Honestly?" I paused, thinking about my answer. "I don't know yet. Some days it hurts so much I can barely breathe. Other days I feel relieved, liberated. I guess it's a process. A grieving. I am mourning the daughter I thought I had. The relationship that was never real." Barbara convinced me to join a support group. Older women who had gone through similar situations, family abuse, financial exploitation, children who had betrayed them. At first, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to share my story with strangers. But Barbara insisted, and she was right. In that group, I found something I didn't expect. Understanding. Not pity, not judgment. Just women who knew exactly how I felt. Women who had made difficult decisions to protect themselves. Women who had chosen dignity over dysfunctional family. Strong women who refused to be victims. One of them, Ashley, told me something I will never forget. Love doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Self-love is also love. And sometimes, walking away from those who hurt you is the greatest act of love you can have for yourself. March brought flowers to the garden. I started spending more time outside, planting, caring for the roses my husband had planted years ago. The dirt under my nails, the sun on my face, the silence interrupted only by birds. Peace. Simple and deep. I also started painting, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I bought canvases, brushes, bright-colored paints. I wasn't good. My paintings were clumsy, childish, but it didn't matter. The process healed me. Every brushstroke was therapy. Every color was freedom. One day in April, the doorbell rang. My heart raced. Would it be Jennifer? Had she come to ask for forgiveness? To try to fix things? I opened the door with trembling hands. But it wasn't Jennifer. It was Herminia, Ryan's mother. She brought a homemade pie. "Mrs. Margaret," she said with a soft voice, "I hope I'm not bothering you. I just wanted to bring you this and apologize for my son, for what they did to you. There is no excuse, no justification." I invited her in. We drank coffee, we ate pie, we talked. She told me Ryan and Jennifer had separated, that Ryan had gone to live with his mistress, that Jennifer had rented a small room on the other side of town, that she was working 2 jobs to pay her debts, that she seemed different, thinner, quieter, sadder. "Have you tried contacting her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "No," Herminia answered. "I think she is ashamed, very ashamed. She doesn't know how to face what she did. Maybe someday she will find the courage. But it won't be soon." After Herminia left, I sat in my armchair, the same armchair where everything had started that Christmas night. I thought about Jennifer, about my daughter. Part of me wanted to call her, wanted to hear her voice, wanted to know if she was okay. But another part, the wiser part, knew it wasn't time yet, that she needed this time to grow, to understand, to change if that was even possible. May arrived with heat. I turned 73. Barbara organized a small party. some friends from the support group, some neighbors, laughter, cake, candles I blew out with a silent wish in my heart, a wish for peace, for healing, for continuity. At night, before sleeping, sometimes I think about everything that happened, about the decisions I made, about the plan I executed, and I don't regret it. Not exposing the truth, not defending myself, not choosing my dignity over a toxic relationship. But I do feel sadness. Sadness for what could have been and will never be. For the family I imagined and that never really existed. This house doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels peaceful. There is a difference. The void hurts. Peace heals. I have learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely, that I can be enough company for myself, that I don't need to sacrifice my peace for fear of loneliness. I look at my reflection in the mirror some mornings. I see a 73-year-old woman, hair completely gray now, deeper wrinkles, hands spotted by age, but I also see something else. I see strength. I see dignity. I see a woman who refused to be a victim, who refused to let the greed of others destroy what cost her so much to build. Will I see Jennifer again? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe in years, when we have both healed. When she can look at me without shame, when I can look at her without pain. Maybe then we can talk. We can try to build something new, not what we had before because that was based on lies, but something different, something honest, something real. But if that never happens, if Jennifer never returns, I will also be okay, because I learned the most important lesson of my life. I learned that my value does not depend on others valuing me, that my self-love is more important than the love of those who do not know how to love. That family is not just blood, it is respect, it is honesty, it is reciprocity. This morning I woke up to the song of birds. I made my coffee. I sat in the garden. The sun warmed my face. A gentle breeze moved the flowers. And for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace, completely free, completely me. My name is Margaret. I am 73 years old. I am a widow, mother of a daughter I don't speak to. But more than all that, I am a woman who learned to defend herself, who learned that it is never too late to reclaim your dignity, who learned that justice sometimes has a high price, but it is worth paying.